Chapter 1. The Shimmer hung in the sky above New Haven like a tear in reality. At first it was faint, barely noticeable against the blue expanse. But over the course of a week it intensified, morphing into a swirling distortion that defied explanation. Speculation ran rampant through the city. Some claimed it was a rare astronomical event, the birth of a new star, or the merger of distant black holes. Others whispered of more supernatural origins, a signal from divine beings or a portent of coming change. But I knew better. I recognized that unearthly shine even if no one else did. How many times had I stared at that same phenomenon, painstakingly encoded in the schematics buried in my grandfather's journals? His life's work, the pinnacle of a brilliant but forbidden line of research, lay crumbling in the darkness of the old workshop, all but forgotten until now. But I never forgot. As a licensed salvager, I made a living recovering scraps of the past. But some things you don't salvage for profit, you salvage for purpose. My family's legacy was complicated, shrouded in rumor and stained by scandal. But the anomaly glimmering overhead was proof that my grandfather had succeeded after all. The world called him reckless, but in the end he had grasped what they all feared, the fabric of the universe itself. I tore my gaze from the anomaly and quickened my pace down the floating walkway, the automated traffic pods hissing past in a Doppler blur. The familiar shapes of the city center gave way to the ramshackle outskirts. Here, the sleek metallic structures were veined with crawling vines, nature reclaiming the artificial world. At the end of a neglected side street stood the old warehouse, my grandfather's workshop. The entrance scanner flashed red, still keyed to his long-dead biosignature. But there were other ways inside for those who knew how to find them. The heavy steel door groaned in protest as I squeezed through the hidden access panel. The interior was dim and stale, motes of dust dancing in the fading light from the skylight overhead. The power cells had run dry years ago. Anything valuable had been stripped and sold for scrap long before I discovered this place as a precocious child, enthralled by the ambition and secrecy within these walls. My fingers brushed over the inactive data terminals and Fisher projection arrays packed into shipping crates. All these machines once focused toward a single goal, proof that our world was but one of infinite possibilities. At the back of the lab, mounted on rails that ran into a tunnel cut into the rock, was the gateway, an unassuming metal ring 3 meters across, but capable of punching through the walls of reality itself. According to the journals, my grandfather had generated a contained wormhole using extremes of gravitational force and a theoretical exotic matter he dubbed Anomalon 318. I didn't understand the physics, but I grasped the implications, the potential to step outside this universe and sample the infinite branches of the hypothetical multiverse. But the collective had intervened, branding the technology disruptive and seizing everything. Only the core components of the unstable prototype were left untouched within this sealed sanctuary. My grandfather disappeared into obscurity, his name tarnished and his vision all but lost. Until today. The anomaly in the sky was the wormhole, somehow triggered remotely, and I was the only one left who could confront it. The click of a power cell snapping into place broke the heavy silence. Lights began to flicker around the lab as dormant equipment sputtered back to life. A familiar whine reverberated through the metal decking as the gateway generator wound up to full power. The ring began to emit an otherworldly glow, casting undulating shadows across the walls. I hesitated before the shimmering portal, knowing this was my point of no return. Stepping through could mean knowledge beyond imagination or complete annihilation. My grandfather had been unable to stabilize the prototype enough for human trials, but the calculations were sound. I had to trust the science. The collective's chokehold on progress had gone on long enough. This technology could allow humanity to evolve, propel our civilization into new realms of understanding. I steeled my nerves and activated the recorder clipped to my jacket. Idris Caldwell, salvage log 425. I'm about to step through what appears to be a stable-generated wormhole, beyond which any number of alternate realities may exist. I can only speculate what I might find on the other side, but I go forth in the spirit of discovery, guided by the vision of my grandfather. Too long we have lingered in stagnation, our potential shackled by fear. What happens today could change everything we thought we knew about the nature of existence. But if we do not seek truth, no matter how profound, we cease to progress. With those final words, I stepped forward, the wormhole embracing me in a tide of shimmering light and needles of strange energy. My atoms buzzed with unfamiliar forces as I crossed the threshold into the unknown. I cannot say what awaited me on the other side, only that our universe and my understanding of it would never again be the same. Chapter 2. Disorientation seized me as I emerged through the gateway. The familiar sight of my grandfather's lab blinked out of existence, replaced by nothing. An infinite void surrounded me, devoid of substance or sensation. I waved my hands in front of my face but saw only an empty gray tableau. Had I been transported to some null dimension, a place between realities? Panic rising, I felt behind me for the portal through which I had come, but my hands grasped at air. I was adrift in this empty expanse. "Hello?" I shouted, desperate for some response, some proof that I still existed. My voice echoed as if into an endless canyon, repeating until it faded to silence. Icy fear prickled across my skin. Had I made a terrible mistake? Disjointed memories of my life in New Haven flashed through my mind like a fading dream. Was I dead? Or worse, erased entirely? A deep hum resonated through the void, seeming to emanate from everywhere and nowhere. It grew louder, vibrating in my bones. Suddenly, the emptiness gave way to a rush of light and sound. I shielded my eyes as scenes began to flash rapidly all around me. People, places, snippets of conversation, all foreign yet eerily familiar. The sensory onslaught intensified. I cried out, dropping to my knees, struggling to process the barrage of alien imagery. Atop it all, the strange humming continued, as if the chaotic symphony was tuned to some cosmic instrument I could not comprehend. Then, as suddenly as it had come, the clamor ceased. I uncovered my eyes, blinking against a glare of white light. The whiteness faded into shapes, desks, screens, windows. I staggered to my feet and turned around in disbelief. I was in an office. Not just any office, my office, the space I occupied daily in my duties for the collective. But as I oriented myself, subtle inconsistencies jumped out. The furniture seemed newer, the technology sleeker. Outside the window, the skyline was both familiar and changed. Buildings in places I didn't recall, architectural styles that didn't fit. Where was I? Some alternate version of New Haven? I rushed to the window, looking for the anomaly, some landmark to make sense of this reality I had been plunged into. But the sky was clear, its blue expanse unbroken. The desk console blinked to life, displaying the collective's logo. "Good morning, Administrator Caldwell," an AI's neutral voice addressed me. "You have a meeting of the Directorate in 15 minutes. The proposal for the Metaverse Integration Project is on your docket for review." Administrator? Before I could process what was happening, a knock came at the door. A woman I vaguely recognized stepped halfway into the office with an apologetic look. "Pardon me, sir. I was asked to remind you about your household staff briefing this evening regarding security concerns. Several protesters were arrested near your family's property last night." I stared blankly, but she seemed to take my silence as acknowledgement. "Very good then. I'll leave you to prepare for your meeting." She departed as efficiently as she had entered, Whatever this reality was, I appeared to be someone important within the ruling structure of the collective. But why? What series of events had led me, or this version of myself, into such an influential role? I needed more information to get my bearings. I sat down at the console and queried the calendar. The integration project referenced earlier appeared to involve connecting multiple versions of New Haven through controlled wormholes, like the one I had opened back home. So my grandfather's work was known here. In fact, it seemed to be sanctioned, embraced even. I pulled up a dossier on this reality's version of me. I skimmed details about an upbringing of privilege, awards for technological innovations, and eventual grooming for political leadership. But the core details echoed my own life, the gifted ancestor who dabbled in forbidden research, the family name tarnished. Except here, that shame had driven me into the collective's highest echelons rather than the outskirts of society. A blueprint displayed on the console screen caught my attention, a strikingly familiar schematic depicting a gateway generator and wormhole stabilizers. The project title read Metaverse Integration Project Phase 1 Activation. Tomorrow this world intended to open the floodgates to the multiverse, with me at the helm. I sat back, exhaling slowly. What was my role here? What could one man do in the face of forces beyond his comprehension, infiltrate leadership and influence change, sabotage the project, or give it my support? Perhaps the answers I sought were out there, in those myriad branches of reality waiting beyond the wormhole. But one thing was certain: I could not remain only an observer. Events were in motion, and whatever happened now would ripple through the fabric of existence itself. My actions here and now mattered, even if I did not yet grasp how. Chapter 3. I sat stunned as the full weight of my predicament took hold. Whatever fork in causality had led me here, I now found myself at the nexus of this world's future. In less than 24 hours, they would breach the walls of our isolated universe, with me at the helm. Could I even attempt to stop the project without being removed as a rogue element? And did I have the right to play God with the fate of an entire reality? This was no longer about vindication for my family name or scientific curiosity. The lives of countless people could be impacted by what came through that gateway. A chime sounded from the console, interrupting my spiral of doubt. The calm voice of my personal AI assistant spoke. "Pardon the interruption, Administrator Caldwell. You asked to be alerted to any anomalous phenomena reported in the city. There have been several sightings this morning of a strange, shimmering apparition near the central public square." I sat up abruptly. "Show me." The screen switched to security footage from the square. Shoppers glanced upward in confusion and alarm at something in the bright sky. I tapped the display to zoom in on the anomaly. It was barely noticeable at first, but unmistakable to my eyes. A wavering, prismatic distortion, the same phenomenon that had appeared over New Haven when I first activated the gateway. Which meant overlay footage from the initial sightings of the anomaly from my home dimension, I ordered. The AI complied, splitting the screen to show the historic recordings on one side, the present footage on the other. The two shimmers, despite originating in different realities, were identical in size, position, and ethereal quality. I leaned back, steepling my hands in front of my chin as the implications crystallized in my mind. This was no coincidence. Just before I had crossed over, I had detected power fluctuations in the gateway. Evidence pointed to the bridge between our dimensions remaining partially open, and now that connection was manifesting visually in this world, which presented me with a difficult but potentially pivotal opportunity. If I could send a message through the anomaly to my own dimension, I could warn my people of what was coming. The collective had proven it would suppress my grandfather's work, but perhaps I could persuade them to prepare for the imminent opening of this channel between worlds. Then an idea struck me. Assuming a stable wormhole connection, what is the maximum amount of data that could be transmitted across the bridge? I asked my AI companion. It whirred for a moment, processing the request. Given the aperture size and energy output, the theoretical limit is in the range of 5 to 8 zettabytes of encoded data per second. A broad smile crept across my face. Not just a message then, so much more. With the right equipment and parameters, I could send through a massive data trove. The accumulated knowledge of this entire civilization, technical schematics, philosophical treatises, duplicative scientific research, the raw building blocks my people could use to advance in a single great leap. We could compress and encode centuries of progress into a succinct transmission. The ethical questions around altering the natural course of a society fell away in the wake of such potential. A single message could be ignored or suppressed by the fearful and powerful. But an undeniable infusion of insight. There would be no stopping the transcendental awakening. I needed to know what had transpired in my absence, and there was only one person I trusted for that, Dr. Vieira. I found her contact info in my directory and placed a secure call. Her aged but sharp features filled the screen. She looked uneasy speaking to someone in my position of authority. Dr. Vieira, I know I'm likely the last person you want to hear from, I began gently. But I need you to suspend your distrust and listen carefully. I believe I have a way to push our society in the direction it has so long needed. Will you help me? Her expression shifted from suspicion to curiosity tinged with hope. I quickly explained the situation, leaving out only the reality-crossing details. If we succeeded, I would reveal the full truth in time. Vieira nodded solemnly as I finished. Your grandfather would be proud, she said. What do you need from me? I outlined the plan to transmit a metadata packet through the anomaly. With her technical expertise, she could assemble the transmission on the other side. Vieira's eyes lit up. It just might work. Let me examine the anomaly firsthand. I will report back soon. Be careful, I urged, but she was already rushing off. I sat back, allowing myself a moment to savor this small victory. Everything was in motion now. All that was left was to set the stage for my greatest reveal. The eyes of my people would turn to the anomaly in fear, but I would give them hope, a future beyond their comprehension. My legacy would be more than a name cleared. It would be the elevation of humanity itself. Chapter 4. The hours until the gateway activation crawled by. I struggled to act natural while navigating the duties expected of my position in this reality. I deflected the enthusiasm of subordinates, made excuses to postpone meetings, and disabled the listening devices I discovered planted in my office. The scope of the ruse expanded hourly. I had dispatched an encrypted data module to Dr. Vieira, containing the technical specifications for tapping into the anomaly's exotic energy signature and harnessing it to transfer data. If she could construct the apparatus in time, we would be ready. That afternoon, as I pretended to review proposals in my office, an urgent communication came through. Dr. Vieira's aged face appeared on the screen, her expression grim. My heart sank. What happened? I asked. The collective knows about the anomaly, and they are displeased, to put it mildly, Vieira said. Administrator Soren has declared an emergency meeting of the Directorate to discuss security concerns and postpone tomorrow's gateway activation. I exhaled slowly, mind racing. Of course the collective would react this way to an unexplained phenomenon appearing on the eve of their precious project. Do you think they know it's a bridge to another dimension? I asked. Vieira shrugged. Perhaps they suspect, though I was discreet in my analysis. but that hardly matters now. She was right. The collective was on high alert and would be looking for any subversives threatening their control. We were out of time. I steeled myself before responding. We'll have to take our chances and proceed tonight. Vera's eyes widened. Tonight? But the transmission array isn't complete and I need to finesse the calibration. You'll have to make do with what you have, I said firmly. This is our only window before they shut everything down. Vera looked uncertain but gave a resolute nod. I'll head to the lab immediately. And you? I still have access to the portal room. I can initiate startup and buy you time to get into position. We exchanged terse farewells. If we succeeded, the world would never be the same, and if we failed, tomorrow's public gateway activation would likely never happen. The futures of two dimensions hung precariously in the balance. Under the guise of surprise inspections, I made my way unhindered to the portal room deep below the collective's central tower. The gateway stood prime but dormant within the sculpted chamber. I logged into the control system using biometrics that matched this body's. Machinery hummed to life, lights flickering in mesmerizing patterns across the ring's inner surface as power built. The arcing pylons around it began to glow and crackle with accumulating energy. At the console, I bypassed the activation safety locks. The wormhole sputtered open, the air inside the ring shimmering like a heat mirage. Alarms sounded as the system detected the unauthorized use. Security wouldn't be far behind. From my pocket, I produced a small spherical drone I had hastily fabricated, imbuing it with traces of my DNA. I programmed a countdown timer and tossed it through the gateway. On the other side, the little drone would disrupt the anomaly just enough for the collective to detect the incursion from this side, like poking a sleeping beast. Moments later, Administrator Soren's furious image appeared on the console screen. "What are you doing?" he demanded. "You were not authorized to activate the portal." I met his glare with a defiant smile. "No one who fears progress should have that authority. I'm simply moving forward without your restraints. If you do not stand down, we will be forced to disable the system remotely," Soren warned. I laughed, amplifying the unhinged persona I now inhabited. "You can certainly try, but I think you'll find all your safeguards already bypassed. No, old friend, the power is mine now." I terminated the link and activated the gateway's defensive shield. Now they could only watch, powerless to intervene. Let them wonder what mad scheme had seized my mind. The real plan was already in motion. At the appointed time, I initiated the contact protocol through the open wormhole, signaling Vera. Her voice responded instantly, boosted through the anomaly conduit. "Prepare for data stream," she announced. A beam of pure white light lanced through the portal, pooling in the center of the ring like liquid before being sucked into some invisible receptacle. Vera's transmission had commenced, an infusion of knowledge surging through the breach in our cosmos. Alarms blared as the influx triggered dangerous power spikes in the gateway systems. The shield began to fizzle under the collective's desperate counterattacks, but it was too late. Whatever happened now, the data would reach its target, unstoppable as a lightning strike to a parched earth. "It's done! We're at capacity!" Vera's voice cut through the din. "Get out of there!" As the shield failed, I rushed to the emergency shutoff switch. With a final act of defiance, I locked down the portal sequence, buying precious time against the collective regaining control. As the wormhole imploded in a blinding flash, I felt a deep calm settle over me. Events greater than myself were in motion. My insignificant fears had fallen away before the monumental possibilities I had helped unleash. Whatever punishment this world held for my transgressions, it was irrelevant. I had shaken the pillars of reality itself. For a brief, brilliant moment, I had gazed upon eternity, not as an observer, but an architect. They could imprison this body, but my spirit soared unbound. Chapter 5. Darkness engulfed me. Had I gone blind? No. My vision slowly adjusted to the dim lighting within a small, Spartan room. I sat up on a simple bunk, disoriented. The gleaming office and position of the morning seemed a lifetime ago. I was in a detention cell, barren except for the basic furniture. They had removed the administrator's luxurious trappings, distilling me to my essence. A smiling calm settled over me. I had succeeded, albeit at a cost. Whatever my fate now, it was insignificant. The events prior to my incarceration were hazy. Some kind of stun blast on the portal room floor, bindings suppressing my movement and then awakening here. No clocks or windows interrupted the timeless monotony. Meals of simple rations arrived at irregular intervals by a slot in the door. During moments of doubt, I retreated into memories of what I had accomplished. Like caressing a mental artifact, I replayed each step of the plan that had torn open the veil of this civilization's isolation. My actions would challenge their cultures and beliefs to the core, forcing change that could not be undone. The reality I had altered was no longer recognizable. At some point, Administrator Soren entered my cell. He stood stiffly with hands clasped behind his back, projecting restrained disappointment. I sat calmly under his scrutiny. "Why?" he finally asked, unable to mask the frustration in his tone. The charade of propriety was fading. I met his intense gaze. "You were foolish to think you could contain every world. No single truth prevails over all. Did you never consider the chaos you might unleash?" He was almost pleading now beneath the official veneer. "What you released cannot be trapped again." I smiled wistfully. Chaos and order, two sides of one coin. Who are we to declare one the whole of truth? Any control is temporary at best. Soren turned and slammed a fist against the wall. "You are a brilliant mind poisoned by dangerous beliefs." His stoicism had cracked, raw emotion bleeding through. I rose and walked over to him, placing a steady hand on his shoulder though he flinched from my touch. "Friend, do you not see?" My voice was gentle. "What terrifies you also sets you free. The minds and beliefs of others are not yours to fashion. You cannot dictate their evolution. The desire to control is simply ego disguised as order." Soren shut his eyes, appearing suddenly weary. There was no interrupting the relentless current now sweeping over human civilization. Truth had shattered into infinite refractions, colored by perspective. In trying to salvage the broken pieces, I had dissolved the bonds holding them together. "We only wanted to protect them," Soren said softly, almost inaudibly. "Protection through control." How easily good intentions paved the road to tyranny. I stepped back. "That choice was not yours to make, but perhaps now your purpose is to help them through the transition, to be shepherds without seeking to be masters." Soren looked up, a spark reigniting behind his eyes, not inspiration but determination. The exhaustion seemed to slough away as he drew himself up decisively. "The Directorate has authorized me to offer you a deal," he said, the stoic administrator once more. "The gateway will remain closed under strict probation, but your knowledge could help regulate contact and exchange between worlds. Join a council to oversee these connections." I shook my head firmly. "I cannot. My path leads elsewhere. I would not chain myself again to any organization, no matter how reformed." Soren nodded, unsurprised. "Know that you will be watched closely. The collective is changed, but remains vigilant." His tone conveyed that negotiations were over. He turned briskly and exited the cell. The lock re-engaged with a heavy clang that resonated with finality. My fleeting dance across the galactic stage was concluded. But in the minds and conversations of multitudes, the ideas I had shared would propagate forever. I sat in meditative silence as the hours stretched on, emptying myself of attachment even to the outcome I had orchestrated. The next step on my journey was unclear, but I felt no restless urgency to take it. I simply existed, observing the rise and fall of breath as though I were separate from my physical form. A subtle vibration began to build, gentle waves passing through the cell walls. The light wavered and dimmed, the energy coalescing into a shimmering aura around my body. A portal was opening, summoned by forces unknown, but I sensed its invitation and purpose. I stood calmly as reality unstitched, dissipating into the ether, my essence detached from its moorings, drawn into the beckoning light. I surrendered to it gladly, a child returning home. The collective and its problems seemed a lifetime away. I became the light, boundless, unconstrained, floating through permutations of existence simultaneously. Then all sensation crystallized again into this moment, this new vessel. Opening my eyes, I saw the familiar surroundings of my grandfather's lab. I was home. The portal which had beckoned me closed again without a trace. No time seemed to have passed since my departure. Newfound joy and tranquility suffused my spirit. My work in the other dimension was done, the results none of my concern. What mattered lay before me now. I breathed deeply, tasting the air of infinite possibilities I had helped unleash for humanity. All roads appeared open, ready to be walked without agenda or regret. With childlike wonder, I prepared to take the first step.